Hi, how's it going? Dave from Comic Book Investments here. 35 years in the industry and 15 years as a dealer. Today we're going to dive into deep, kind of like more newer one, Raphael #1. See, I have like a whole stack right here. Just tons and tons and tons of them. Yeah. Yeah, see, I got them all right here. Yeah, that's just from probably the last 2-3 weeks worth of buying. I constantly buy them anytime I can get my hands on them. Anytime I can get a collection of them or something like that. I just got another collection coming in of a bunch of turtle stuff, and there's a couple in there as well. But yeah, so I mean, the importance of Raphael #1 is basically it's the first appearance of Casey Jones. And also, what people probably don't realize is it's a very early appearance of the Turtles. So, this came out in 1985, and what Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, the creators, were trying to do was get you more in touch with each turtle instead of like having every story just be about the four. This one, so they had Raphael, Donatello book, Leonardo book, Michelangelo book, and Raphael was the first one they went with. Raphael is actually the oldest of the turtles. I'm not sure if that's why they went with him. I also thought maybe back in the day Raphael was more of the center character in a way that since he's the oldest, he's kind of like the leader. But then the cartoon kind of changed all that and everything like that. And he always had a riff with Leonardo. But anyways, so they made Raphael #1 in 85. And that is right around, they released, it was in between kind of Turtles #3, Turtles #4, somewhere in there. So it's technically their third, fourth appearance. So it's an early appearance of the Raphael. And then there's Casey Jones, which is a huge hit as well. So with any turtle thing, it's just been skyrocketing lately. And, you hear about the bubble bursting, whether it be in stocks or the housing market bubble or, bursting, right? It means it's getting inflated. And eventually something's going to pop and it's coming down. But there's also another bubble. There's the compression bubble, which is basically artificially keeps things down. And eventually, it just can't hold anymore and it's going to explode. And that's kind of like what happened with the turtles, is it's been kept down for so long that it's exploding. The reason why it's exploding now is because the way people collect or maybe even invest is a lot of times people will collect what they have an emotional connection to. So whether it be comics or sports or whatever it is, that's what people get into. So usually the huge spike happens around when people are right around in their 30s to 40s, and that's when they start like, well, I have all this extra money. Now they have a decent job, maybe they have kids and their kids are kind of grown, and they have some extra time, some extra money because they moved up in their company or whatever, however they get their money. And now they're like, well, I want to get stuff for me. And so a lot of times what people do is if they have that collection bug or their nostalgia bug, they'll go back to what they used to have when they were a child. And, maybe back in the day, spending $5 on the comic book was kind of a lot. But now it's like, I have hundreds, thousands of dollars to spare. I want, an old video game or a Pokemon card or a comic book. And it's like, what is that, $100? Oh, that's really nothing to me now. Like, when I was younger, yeah, $100 was everything, But now it's like, $100, it's like, okay, it's like nothing, Now that they're older and more established. It's during those times that people have a little extra money, and so they go back to what they have an emotional connection to. It might be sports, cards, whatever it is. And so the Turtles is huge during like my generation, right? The Turtles everywhere, and I'm at that age where it's like now people remember the Turtles, they want to go back, and they were so huge that's now everyone's just jumping into the Turtles because it's at that age now where people have the money to relive their childhood or whatever it is, nostalgia. So turtle stuff is a skyrocketing, and I don't think it's a speculation where it's just going to go up and it's going to drop down like some other books and stuff like that. because like movies and stuff like that. I think this Turtles is here to stay. And another thing is an independent comic, so it was very. They didn't have massive print runs, right? You know, like if you had during the mid '80s, if you had a Spider-Man comic, you know, you could have print runs in the hundreds of thousands. You know, that wasn't like that for independent comic books. They were much smaller print runs, you know, in the hundreds, maybe even thousands. You know, Turtles was very successful, so they had a higher print run, but, you know, it's like you look at like Bone or The Crow or something like that, they're going to be smaller print runs of them. So it makes them more rare. And, you know, I remember they used to try to sell Turtles at the San Diego Comic Con, and my dad used to, he had a booth there. And he said he remembers them, and he's like, yeah, there's just some weird Turtles things. No comic person really cared because they were into selling like old, you know, comic books, you know. And my dad was like, yeah, I remember them. They just kind of had a booth and some independent stuff. But yeah, so like I'm gonna dive more into the numbers of Raphael #1. Although I'll probably do another one with Turtles #1 and that other stuff. But for right now, Raphael #1 because I have a whole bunch of them. But I'll dive in, and you'll see that it's kind of like steady growth, and it's going to pop up. But I think as a long-term investment, I think it's so good. Short-term, long-term, I think this is a great investment. So let's dive into the numbers. Here we're going to look at Raphael #1. All right. Let me close some of these. All right. So Raphael #1, 1985. The thing with this one is, like now that it's definitely spiking up in here, but for this book, I would suggest if you're doing long-term investment, get at least an 8.0. You want to get at least an 8.0. I mean, you can get lower grades; it's fine too, but it's going to be much more desirable in the higher ends, and we'll look more into that in a bit. But yeah, if you just look at how it's been, you know, let's look at an 8.0 for example. Like waving, then massive spike, right? Massive spike. You know, let's look at like a 9.0. There's gonna be more sales in 9.0. But yeah. So look, it's just slowly steady going along, dips a little bit, not much going on, has a little thing, and then it just skyrockets, right? And that's because during these times, like back then, you know, the comic wasn't that old. It was 20 years old, and so even if you got the comic at like 0, you'd be 20 years old. So you have to wait until this generation, my generation, goes and buys it, you know, has the money to spend and wants to relive. So yeah, if you see this as like constant green arrows, it's going up, right? And I still think that, like, even though there's a massive spike, right, towards recently, I still think that this book long term, because I think this book was artificially being like it's pushed down. It should have been like a more slow, steady growth and a little spike at the end. But it was just like, I don't know, it's people just during this time. I was like, during these times right here, I was buying them up. I was buying them up, and holding on to them. And now, you know, I remember I got one for like probably, I don't know what grade it was. I can't remember, but it was probably like a 9.4. It was more time. I think I paid like around $100, like 120, something like that. So like right around here, I was paying like, because I knew, like I was like, this book shouldn't be. And it was the same with like Star Wars. Even recently, Star Wars books, like if you went back a couple of years ago, a year ago even, you know, you could get like a random book. You know, I'm not talking about the first Mandalorian, like the Boba Fett and the Yoda and stuff like that. Even like the first Lando's been skyrocketing, but just like a random Star Wars book, not a first appearance of anyone or anything special. And you can get a 9.8, so you know, issue number 40 something, right? 30 something, and $50, $70. I'm like, this is crazy. Star Wars is huge, and this is a 9.8, and it's just like worthless. Now people are seeing like, oh. And like now you can get that same 9.8 books like 120, 150, 220, 250, right? Because people seeing like, this is Star Wars, like it should be more. Like, yeah, you have your keys like your Star Wars 1 and, you know, your 68 and 42, But it's like the other ones, it's like shit. And that's what's happening with Turtles, dude. Just a random Turtles issue. Issue number, 17. Nothing special. It's like, before it'd be like, oh, you have a 9.8 book, like $50, maybe $100, right? Buy now or something. But now it's just like, okay, now they're like $200-$300. And that's where it should be. These are like 9.8s. Like, so, yeah, I remember picking them up a bunch in probably like 2019 for like $100, and then it's like now, I've been unloading a bunch. I still save a bunch to, I have to make money. So, but now that, I remember it's like we sold one for like $1,200 or $1,400 like a few months back, and I was like, oh, what did we pay for it? Oh, $100, like $120 or something like that, And it was just, it was just because I knew this stuff was going to skyrocket. So I'll give you, look at, like, if you can get a 9.8, get a 9.8. That's what you want. You want to get a 9.8, 9.6. In this type of book, like this newer stuff, you want like the higher grades. Like I would start at like a 9.0 and anything above that, Yeah, you can still get your 8.0s and 7.5s and stuff like that. Look at a 4.5 sold for $325. It's crazy, And then just a year ago, March 2020, 6.5 sold $91. But yeah, so let's dive into a little more. Now you see like the graphs of things. Let's look at that, like a 9.8 graph. So this is going to be more steady, slowly going up over time, and then reason skyrocket, because most people are going to try to go for the 9.8 if they can get this book. Now it's becoming unattainable because who has $6,000? So now those people have to go back down to here. So these will be pushed up a little more. But yeah, so let's dive into my numbers sheet. Yeah. All right. So this basically shows what the average sale was during this time. And honestly, these numbers were harder to get back in 2005. Like, look, there's no sales. Like, people didn't care. In 2005, no one sold a 9.8. 2010, no one even sold a 9.8. Like, it wasn't even until like 2013, I think, was the first record of a sale of a 9.8. Because people were just like, whatever, it's Turtles. And during that time, yeah, there's the internet, but people didn't use it as much as, I remember being in high school and like my cousins and stuff didn't even have computers or internet. Like, I did, but there's people that didn't even like download songs from like Napster and LimeWire and stuff like that. But I was always that type of person that could, I was always downloading stuff and always like, I remember getting old, rips of old movies and stuff like that. Now they have streaming. That's what I do now. But yeah, so it's like people didn't like eBay. People didn't really use it as much. And so then the only way you could get, say, a Raphael #1 was a dealer would have to sell it, either in one of their big auctions or something like that, and they didn't care. They're like, what? I remember my dad would always like say like, oh, that's new stuff is like garbage. Like Turtles, oh, it's garbage. It's new. Like he only deals in like action #1s, like old Golden Age and old Silver Age. It's like new stuff. He called it garbage because he's like, oh, it's worthless. Like I'm not even gonna bother. And I'd always tell him like, no, you gotta get it. And I would always, whenever he gets some, I would just buy from him, but he wouldn't try to get it. But anyways, so yeah, you can get like a 9.0, $25. Like that barely covers the cost of casing the book in CGC, right? 5 years later, they average around $70. Hey, you got nearly a 200% return. Like, it's not that much when you're only dealing with $25. Then 5 years later, it doubles. Like, still, like, even this is before the huge spike. Still, slowly going up, right? I mean, in 5 years, doubling your money in a stock, that's great. That's great. Most stocks you can expect, like, if you're doing good, you're getting 10% return. That's pretty good, right? I can't remember. I think the average of the SP 500 is, let's see. Let me see real quick. Average SP 500 return. All right, since the 1920s, the average for the SP 500 has been 10%. So you're looking at 10%. That's pretty good. And again, this stuff is during the crash. All right, so then you go 2018. actually goes down. There's just not that many sales. Oops. All right, but then if you go to the most recent sale of 2021, right? You're looking at the most recent sale, $1,200. That 15-year return is 4,800% from, or it's technically 16-year return, from 2005 to now. Think about that. That's ridiculous. Like, now you're in the area of like Amazon and like Apple and, you know, and Tesla, like that return rate right there. You know, look at the 9.4. This is a little better grade. But it's like you got, you know, maybe a 300% return, 150% return. This is still way back in the day. Then in like from 2015 to 2018, you got a 5% return. Okay, not so great. But then from 2018 to now, most recent sale, a 900% return in 2-3 years. In a 16-year return thing, you're almost at a 10,000% return. This is why comics are good investments. If you know what to buy, and then you got into like the 9/8, right? You know, there's no data for it back then because people didn't care. But look at that, 2015 to now, you could buy it for $500. 2018, you could have got for, you know, even from 15 to 18, you're looking at a 20% return. That's not terrible. And then, you know, 2018 to now, look at it, jumps up 10x. Like, not that long ago, you could have picked one up for $600 now, selling for $6,000, and it's only gonna go up. Like, I've been seeing recent auctions, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's kind of gonna plateau. So it's gonna keep on going up, and then it's gonna slowly down, and then it's gonna plateau, and then it'll have a little bit of a dip period, because then people will be like, oh no, the whole wave have stopped, just like stocks. But just like a good company, like, it's a good book, so it's going to stand on its own. Yeah, it's going to go up, slightly go down, but then it'll start picking up and going up again. So long term, I suggest this book. If you can, pick yourself up a top grade, so like at least 9.0 and above. Like, yeah, you can get an 8.0 or something like that, but again, if you like the book, get the book. But yeah, this is a great long-term investment. Like I said, I have tons back there, and I'll get tons more. I mean, I get some every single week. And I'm slowly sell a few here, sell a few there. But yeah, thanks. If you found this video helpful, please comment below. If you'd like to see me more of analysis of another book that you want me to talk about, just comment below. Please like and subscribe. I'm trying to grow this channel. Share it with anyone, you know, if you know anyone that would be interested in this stuff. And yeah, let's keep on investing. Thanks.